So if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself. Or-
Just my name? Okay. Simin Royanian.
and do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes.
So what brought you to this event?
Well, I'm here because I'm generally involved in the progressive movement in in DC and its metropolitan area. So I am very close to the organizers of today's rally. So I knew from the beginning when it was being set up. Then I was asked by them to be one of the people to give a solidarity message also.
So are you going to give the solidarity message today? What's it going to be?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give a message today, yes. And you had another question? Because
Yeah. Oh, how long have you been involved with the movement?
with what movement?
The progressive movement that you've been, or just in DC?
Well, basically, I have been involved, since I was very young in Iran with the, movement against the government there. So when I came here, when I was 21 to go to graduate school, automatically I was already politically active. So I got involved right away with the movement of the time, which the most prominent of it at the time in 1968, 66 in fact, when I came, was the peace movement against Vietnam War. So that's how I got introduced to the American movement. So ever since then, it has continued in all areas of women's rights and civil rights and all the others.
So what have been the most important moments in all of those movements for you?
Well, you see, I'm 75 and I have been going for like 60 years. So there are many times I remember. But one that is, related to today, which is the Indigenous Peoples Day, is in 1978 when the Native Americans came on a long march and they came 2,000 miles or something, but they ended up in Washington, D.C. So I remember that, and also there were such a huge number of them, and it happened that a group of them had their tents in a park, in a federal park, in College Park. At the time, I was still working on my PhD with the University of Maryland in College Park. So I happened to be living in an apartment right next to the park. So I was also involved, on an everyday basis where they were parked, and we talked and all of that. Yes, so I remember specifically that long march. Yeah. And here they gathered, in fact, in Malcolm X Park. Yes.
So what changes have you seen in the movement since you've been involved for so long? Like, has anything changed, or like from 1978 to now?
You mean in the indigenous peoples only? You're specifically talking about
Yes.
indigenous peoples. Okay, so because, I'm not Native American, but, at the time we had a very strong revolutionary movement of the indigenous people here, Ames, the American Indian movement, it was called at the time. And of course, we remember the Wounded Knee, and then, the remembering of that when the FBI agents, yet again at that time, attacked the Native Americans and killed several. And then, of course, Peltier, who is still in jail, unfortunately, as an old man, and has been moved, I believe, if I'm not wrong, to a prison in Florida. So he was one of the people who was imprisoned. So there was a very um, revolutionary and united movement of the Native Americans at the time. But from my point of view, unfortunately, with the attack of the counterattack of the ruling class here on all the movements, the Native Americans, the African Americans, the Black Panthers, and the the women's movement and the anti-war movement, all of that has been successful in suppressing and oppressing the people in the movement to a great extent. And unfortunately, at this time, we do not have a strong organizations and movements in many areas, including the Native American. So the hope is that, people get united again and struggle, more unified and revolutionary.
So last year, the DC government replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Why do you think that change happened? Like, why do you think that the government did that then?
Well, I believe that the governments take actions, especially progressive actions, not the regressive ones, not like when they reduce the rich people's taxes, they do it on their own accord. But whenever something happens that is beneficial to the people, it happens because of the movement of the people and the pressure that they put on the elected officials to eventually respond to some of the demands. So because there has been a strong and a long-term opposition to the day, whatever that day, I don't know how it was decided, that was the date to be celebrated, celebration of a criminal in history of humanity being called Columbus Day, which of course DC is named after that. So people have been opposed to that, and I think recently, for a while, for decades, but more, there had been a pressure, the same one that now we see being represented in the movement and the pressure to bring out the various statues, of oppressors like Andrew Jackson. And so that eventually was successful in making the DC government respond. And last week, the government of Virginia did the same thing and pronounced the day, the Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't, in fact, have the information about how many other jurisdictions in the U.S. have done that.
Why do you think that some people have resisted the name change? Like, why do some people not want it to change?
Well, it depends on who are the people who resisted. Like, for example, we also have the people wanting to change the name of the football team in DC, which I think it has been successful because now they do not refer to it as Redskins. So this, the people, I think, I haven't interviewed them or done a scientific study, but I think the people who oppose it usually are not from the oppressed people. It's definitely like changing the name of Columbus Day or taking down the Confederate flag or the statue of Andrew Jackson is not opposed usually by Native Americans or African Americans or many people of other colors. I would think the majority of the opposition comes from the those in power who are majority the white people in this country. And the opposition, of course, is because the people who oppose even the symbolic change is because they are still supporting the oppression of people who are represented as oppressed by the promotion of those who were the hero of colonialism. So that, I think, is the reason. I don't think that there is an innocent or, not political reason. I think it's just drawn across, the oppressed and the oppressor.
Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or share with us about the movement or anything at all?
I'm glad that you are here, the young people, because of course it goes without saying that the world belongs to you, and we, my generation, we tried very hard to bring about a better world, but for the most part we failed. I mean, there have been some achievements. Some rights have been won, even though most of them are under attack today. But we were not successful in removing the greatest aspects of class oppression. And now, unfortunately, we are facing with the most dangerous aspect of capitalist propaganda and consumption and production, which is the destruction of the earth. So I think we are at a point where the whole existence of this earth and humanity is under question. So I think the young people have a very heavy load, and but time is short, and I think that the need for really unifying all the people around this issue of saving the earth, because otherwise nothing survives. And it's really, I think, important to realize that this unbridled and expansive capitalist production globally, which is based on extreme exploitation of land and air and water, is not sustainable. It is not possible to develop any kind of so-called clean energy that allows us to continue our cruel exploitation of land and the animals and the water and the air. There is a limit to it, and the sooner that we realize that we have to limit our way of life and change it in order to save the earth, I think that's the most important issue today.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us and sharing.
Thank you for giving me the chance to speak with you. Thank you.